Again, thank you guys for joining today. Today we're going to be discussing app layering done right with Liquidware FlexApp. Before we get started, I do want to mention that we have started our Ford Bronco giveaway again. For those of you that, maybe this is the first time you've joined one of our events. Last year we did give away Ford Bronco. We are doing that again this year to one of our customers. So definitely go out and register for that. You could be the lucky winner of a Ford Bronco. So real quick, this is our agenda. I'm just going to go over very quickly who we are at XenTegra, what our purpose is. We're going to talk about app layering, specifically with Liquidware FlexApp, some of the challenges with how we handle applications today. We're going to jump into a demo, walk through actually layering some applications, and I think Johnny's got some goodies for us, and we'll kind of go through that. And then last, we'll talk about future roadmap, right? So what's on the roadmap for FlexApp specifically? We'll end with any additional questions you guys may have. But like I said, definitely want to make this interactive. So if you guys have questions, feel free to not wait till the end. Actually post those in the chat window. We'll touch on those as we're discussing that topic. So just want to introduce myself. Again, my name is Randy Price. It says sales engineer. I should change that to actually solutions architect. My title did change at XenTegra. Been with the company for over about 5 years now. Been in the industry for 20 plus years, specifically around Citrix, VMware, Microsoft solutions. If you've ever taken advantage of one of our micro assessments, there's a good chance I was involved in that, specifically on the Citrix or VMware side. If you're not familiar with that, just understand, it's definitely something to consider taking advantage of. These are free, complimentary, $0 assessments that we perform up to 4 hours for our customers. It's a great way just to get an idea of, where you guys stand meeting vendor recommended practices around things like performance, security, high availability, user experience. Definitely check that out. And we can couple that with do this in a couple of different methods. One of those is actually using Liquidware Stratosphere. I know we're not necessarily talking about that today, but definitely want to call that out. So Liquidware also has a very good monitoring solution called Stratosphere that we can get a lot of metrics. And we actually have a workshop next month or a webinar where we'll be talking about Stratosphere again and kind of talking about some of the use cases, more around non-technical use cases, but it's a great primer to Stratosphere if you guys are not familiar with it. So today I also have the pleasure of being joined by Johnny and Tom from Liquidware. I'm going to let them introduce themselves just very quickly before we get started. Johnny, if you want to start.
Yeah, Johnny Ma, Senior Solutions Architect / Sales Engineer with Liquidware. Help our customers with Profile Unity, FlexApp, Stratosphere, and our up-and-coming command control products.
Awesome. Tom?
Yep, Tom Wynn, Solutions Architect as well, and then I cover the same stack as Johnny for Liquidware, just in a different region. About 20 years experience with end-user computing.
Very good, very good. Appreciate it, guys. Like I said, got some very smart people on this webinar today or workshop. So feel free to throw your questions out. Again, we want to hear what sort of solution you're using today, sort of challenges you're having, kind of what drove you here. So definitely want to make that interactive. But before we get into the demo and kind of talk about FlexApp itself, I want to quickly talk about who we are at XenTegra, right? This is Andy Whiteside. He's our founder and CEO. And he was a Citrix sales engineer for about 7 years. While he was in this role, Andy came to realize that at that time, the Citrix channel partners only cared about being brought into a customer accounts and closing deals. And what customers really needed was enablement around the products they were purchasing, right? And sadly, the vendors just were not able to provide this enablement, and this frustrated Andy. So in 2012, Andy founded XenTegra, and the goal of XenTegra was to enable customers to enhance the end user community and really form true partnerships with the various ecosystem vendors, right? So in that end user compute space, XenTegra strives to add value and enable our customers through various education and training services that we provide. Events, webinars, workshops such as this one is, and we continue to do that today. Today XenTegra is a virtual end user computing reseller. We invest heavily in our partnerships, our customers, and community by providing carefully selected products, expert services, along with practical training and advice as well. So our goal is to bring the right products together to enable a user-centric workspace, right? We sell, design, and integrate these solutions that help to get technology out of the way, but to enhance user productivity and help you with your digital transformation initiatives. I mentioned Andy used to be a sales engineer with Citrix. Our roots are heavily grounded within Citrix, but our goal is to make your end user compute solution successful. So we pulled in other key focused partners to enhance and expand your user workspace experience. So regardless if you're using Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, we can help you along your path. We also have our strategic partners. We consider these to be, I'll call them niche solutions, right? That really make any end user computer deployment to really go from good to great. XenTegra handpicks these partners and embeds them where needed to help our clients be successful. Today, we're specifically working with Liquidware, and we're talking about the challenges, right, of application management, how we're handling the never-ending life cycle, right, of application management, specifically around app layering. So real quick, why XenTegra? We realize that you guys have many options when it comes to partners in this end user space. However, I dare to say no other partner will add as much value as XenTegra does. So we ask you to truly evaluate your current partner and ask yourself, what value do they truly bring, right? How does this partner ensure my future success? Or does this partner really only care about a transaction? We're committed heavily in our customers and prospects. Already mentioned through things like free education and events, as well as the free micro assessments. Very capable. We employ only the best of the best. We pride ourselves on getting industry experts and employees who are passionate about your success, whether that be around Citrix, again, VMware, Microsoft. Those are just to name a few. Definitely care and or want to be help you to be successful wherever you guys are on that journey. We are a top national Citrix and Microsoft partner. We're growing. We're smart and strategic about that. There's no client that's too big or too small. We treat all our clients the same. So, just to review the XenTegra value add, right? I already talked about the fact we offer these complimentary assessments. If you guys want to take advantage of those, definitely reach out to your XenTegra client executive following this. We can also reach out. We'll follow up afterwards and see if it's something you guys want to take advantage of. And that also gets you entered into the Ford Bronco drawing as well. XenTegra webinars, these hands-on workshops. We do offer vendor-focused podcasts. In this industry, definitely recommend going out, subscribing to that. We typically have a podcast related to Citrix, or whether it's VMware or Microsoft, whatever it may be, right? We have a lot of these vendor-focused podcasts. Definitely highly encourage you to take advantage of that, as well as conference passes, right? So one thing that we do as well is work with you to obtain conference passes to be able to send you to the various conferences. So if you're interested in any of these things, again, follow with us following this workshop. So now that I got all that out of the way, let's talk about app layering, right? Specifically, we're going to be talking about Liquidware FlexApp. Again, I know that there is a reason that most of you came to this workshop today. Most likely, if you guys are having issues with application delivery or image management. Some of you said you guys were using app volumes today. Maybe you're using Citrix app layering. Maybe you don't have any solution in place, right? And that's really a different topic. But all in all, when we talk about the challenges and the issues we're trying to solve, I believe the most common issues are the fact that installing apps per PC or image is really inefficient and time consuming. We typically have multiple images that we're having to maintain based upon departmental apps, for example. And these images are also based upon the OS version, right? Whatever the underlying OS which really multiplies the issue, especially if you have hundreds of apps we're having to maintain. For example, if I have Windows 10 and I've got Server 2016, 2019, 2022, Windows 11, if I've got multiple operating systems, this just multiplies this. And it's, it's just a never ending cycle for both virtual and physical desktops, trying to maintain applications, maintain updates, and versioning of these applications as well. So what is the solution, right? How can we solve this? Really, the solution is separating the apps from the base image. So a lot of you guys are attempting to do this today using, again, Citrix App Layering, VMware App Volumes. And that's great. You think about it, managing apps from the base image is more efficient. The base OS image management becomes easier. We have far less number of images that are required because the apps are managed separately. Those base images now remain clean and pristine. Also allows for the potential portability of applications across operating systems. And who can benefit from this the most? Really everyone, right? Especially customers with dozens or even hundreds of applications. So when we talk about this, separating the apps from the base image, what solution can help solve these challenges and provide the ability to decouple the applications from the base OS? There are several players in this space. We already talked about, we've got some people on here that using app volumes from VMware or Citrix App Layering, but none can provide the flexibility, the ease of deployment, and the administration as Liquidware FlexApp. And that's why it's really considered a leader in this space. Liquidware has won numerous rewards, and FlexApp was also the first app layering solution available on the Amazon Marketplace and Microsoft Azure as well. So what is FlexApp, right? So FlexApp is an advanced feature within the Profile Unity user environment management platform. It's a fully integrated solution that leverages profile settings and policies, but can also be implemented independent of Profile Unity's core UEM features. And we'll talk about Profile Unity and what that is. I feel like I need to at least explain a little bit about Profile Unity since it utilizes the same architecture. We'll talk about that in a few slides later, but do want to call out that you can implement FlexApp independently if you're satisfied with whatever profile management solution you're using today or user environment management solution. FlexApp does enable administrators to assign departmental level applications to groups of users. One of the key differentiators I would say with FlexApp application layering is it's compatible with all the major desktop virtualization platforms, right? So it works with Citrix DAS or Citrix Cloud. It works with VMware Horizon, right? Microsoft AVD, Nutanix Frame, Amazon. Not to mention one thing that really stands out, it also works with physical PCs. It supports virtually all application types, provides flexible layering options, right? So not just layering at system boot, I can layer at user login, I can perform a click to layer, which is essentially allows for an icon to be displayed on the desktop for an application, but it's not actually layered into the OS until the user launches the app. And there's many other ways that we can layer these applications. We'll talk about that a little later as well. FlexApp also enables you to perform multi-cloud staging and hosting of applications, utilizing whatever cloud provider of your choice, right? So imagine being able to set up an application store in, say, Azure, for example, right? And being able to provide these applications. We'll kind of talk through that a little later and maybe even showcase some of that, but being able to utilize, whatever cloud provider of your choice and be able to stage these applications, as well as replicate these applications, right, to a secondary data center and have these apps readily available for end users. We talk about what are some of the benefits of FlexApp, compared to, Citrix App Layering or VMware App Volumes. A few of the big things, right? One is the fast packaging. It literally takes you the same amount of time to package an application as it does to install it. So that's a game changer. So I think of something like Citrix App Layering, right, where you have to spin up a packaging VM, you go through, you install your applications, then you have to wait for it to finalize, and there's that process, right, before you can go and distribute that application. It literally takes the amount of time to install the app as it does to package. Also gives you package once. So I can take a packaged application, it can be deployed to any Windows OS that supports that application. So, kind of talked earlier about having multiple operating systems in your environment. If you have, Windows 10, Server 2016, Server 2019, for example, Windows 11, I may have to package one application multiple times to support their operating system. With FlexApp, I can package it once, and as long as that operating system supports it, then I can deploy that app to that OS. Also supports cloud apps. So FlexApp features several prepackaged cloud-based applications. You can utilize these yourself. You can clone them, make modifications to them. And again, it just goes back to being able to stage and have a cloud-based repository of applications. Also supports session isolation, right? So multiple users can be logged on to a single Citrix hosted shared virtual app, Microsoft RDS server, and each user get their unique application sets, right? So now instead of having to silo off applications, I can have users log in and based upon the session, really isolate and give them the application sets they need. And this happens at logon time. Also performs micro isolation. So packaging and any sort of inter-app interactions are seamless with zero file conflicts. Another thing that FlexApp includes as part of the Profile Unity as well, integration, is application and user rights management, right? So being able to elevate, credentials or a thread, right? Whatever it may be, we can do that with the integration with Profile Unity as well. Also supports context-aware triggers based upon users, groups, time, endpoint the user's connecting from, whether they're using Citrix or maybe they're coming in or VMware Horizon, or maybe they're utilizing a physical desktop. I can really configure these triggers based upon many different variables. And we'll show that a little later as well. And all of this is delivered from a centralized management console. There's no database requirements, and we can utilize your existing infrastructure. And I'll showcase that here in a moment as well on another slide. So this is the FlexApp layered approach, right? It's really taking any Windows OS level, apps packaged individually and stored in a CIF share or some sort of object-based cloud storage. We assign these to users, and we just, at that point, create a desktop pool utilizing any OS or any app combination, really being able to target our users, right? Giving them the applications they need. And again, being able to layer that either at boot, log on time, or click to layer. FlexApp has the capability to support automation. So this is really ideal for customers that have, many different apps that they're having to maintain. Think of it as more of a DevOps sort of operation, right? Where I can have bulk packaging of these applications. So, think about having the capability now to, maybe it's Monday and let's say it's Patch Tuesday, right? I'm just using this as an example, and you've got multiple applications that you need to patch. I can use the FlexApp package automation to essentially, assign these applications or determine what applications I want to patch, kick off a batch process, leave at 5 o'clock, come in the next morning. These are all patched, ready to go for me to deploy. It's this sort of automation that's built in. That really separates, Liquidware FlexApp from some of the other key vendors that we mentioned earlier. Another solution is FlexApp One. So imagine being able to take your application layer and really convert it to a self-contained, application set that allows you to distribute whatever method you like when there's no external player or any sort of agent that's needed to execute, right? So now we can distribute it. There's no reboots needed. We can distribute it a variety of different methods, whether it be on a USB drive, whether it be through something like OneDrive or Microsoft Endpoint, whatever it may be, and be able to distribute that application. We can also run these offline, right? So imagine being able to distribute this to, take the example, I've got contractors and they need access to an application set, right? I can now distribute this application offline, and I can even set an application expiration. So now that user has a capability to run that application locally on their endpoint, and I have an expiration. So after that expiration date, the application just stops working, right? So you have that sort of capability as well. So when we talk about FlexApp, I do want to talk about FlexApp One, since that is a capability. The question always comes up: when would I use one over another, right? And really, it comes down to connectivity, right? You know, does the workspace, again, that typically this would be more of a physical PC, need to be able to work offline, right? And is it well managed? And that sort of scenario, right? That's where I'm looking at something like a FlexApp 1. If I need to utilize Profile Unity for the rights management, right? If I need to need to do any sort of privilege elevation, or make any sort of modifications to registry, or keep full inventory of the Flex apps that are distributed, that's where I would look at something like a Flex app. And we'll talk about that and kind of showcase that here a little later and show some of the differences. So looking at Flex app, we can see there are several potential use cases, benefits when we use Liquidware's solution for application delivery. Things like simplified app management, supporting non-persistent desktops, simplifying the base image management, business continuity, right? Again, being able to replicate these applications to another data center, maybe to the cloud, right? All of this kind of built in within the solution itself. Liquidware also maintains a community site where you can find things like discussions. They have recipes as well. One thing I would say is go out and you look at their recipes. There's not a lot out there, and that's why the reason for that is Liquidware's done a great job of working with the various applications to ensure support. I would dare to say it versus app volumes or Citrix app layering, you're going to get more compatibility with applications with FlexApp than you are those other solutions. A lot of great information there. Definitely check that out as well. So quickly before we get into the demo, I do want to switch for a moment and talk about the architecture. This architecture is the same for Profile Unity. Again, FlexApp Profile Unity, kind of built on the same architecture. For on-prem deployments, it does run as a standalone system. We can use your existing infrastructure for deployment. So again, there's no proprietary database, right? Used for, configuration of user profiles or data. There is a lightweight client that we install our endpoints, but there's no downtime required, right? So we can utilize, any sort of software distribution method. We can utilize group policy to push those out, whatever it may be. A lot of customers will end up storing these on the net logon share because it's there and it's highly available and it's replicated, right? But we can also use any other enterprise share as long as, again, as it's highly available. We have some replication there. But I would say the majority of customers are utilizing that net logon share. It's to store the configuration files in the agent from a distribution standpoint. So, talked about a little bit about FlexApp, talked about how that can help from an application layering perspective. We'll see that here in a moment. I do want to talk about Profile Unity and what benefits it can provide. For a couple of things. One, Profile Unity, it's really leading the market when we talk about cloud integration for modern desktops. You can now deliver your profiles delivered from object-based cloud storage, whether it be from Amazon, Google, Microsoft Azure Blob Storage, and we can utilize that now to save our profiles and policy settings. Utilizing cloud storage for profiles is seamless. It's fully integrated. There's zero downtime. There's API level integration to allow you to transition your user profile securely at log off, or even during the user session in the background from on-prem to cloud. We can even take things like user created data, such as my documents, pictures, and have those set to be automatically transferred in the background to cloud-based storage. This could be anything like Microsoft OneDrive. It could be Dropbox, it could be Google Drive, whatever it may be, right? This functionality helps to ensure user data is always secure and available to the user wherever they have access, even mobile devices. So Profile Unity with FlexApp really delivers that feature-rich user persona management application layering solution for both virtual desktop deployments and physical, which again, huge differentiator versus a Citrix app layering or a VMware app volumes, right? Profile Unity decouples user profiles, settings, and data from the operating system, ending that end user migration lifecycle management to a new Windows desktop OS, or migrating, say, from Citrix, Citrix DAS or Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops to maybe you're migrating to Microsoft Azure virtual desktops or VMware Horizon, or vice versa, right? Maybe you're migrating to Citrix. Profile Unity doesn't care. Really helps with those sort of migrations, being able to migrate from, one system to another without having lock-in from a specific vendor. I already spoke about the fact that it does utilize a lightweight agent, very simple to install. Profile Unity separately stores and dynamically applies these user profiles, the configurations, the data, and the selected layer of applications from FlexApp to a Windows OS in seconds at login. It really helps you become very flexible with your desktop deployment strategy. The other thing to mention, these profiles are extremely portable across operating systems, right? So we're able to take that profile and use it across multiple operating system versions. And we could even be used with solutions such as FSLogix, right? So if you guys are using FSLogix for profile management, Liquidware Profile Unity has their own profile disk solution as well. Profile Unity can also hydrate those, right? So having multiple FSLogix profiles for various operating systems, we can use Profile Unity to help populate that user's profile on FSLogix as well. So last slide, and then we're going to jump into the demo. Profile Unity, I would just say that offers these key advantages. Again, centralized dynamic user profile management. We talked about app and policy management across multiple Windows versions. It does retain profiles in native Windows format, which keeps them backward and forward compatible across operating systems. Those profiles can also coexist, like I mentioned earlier, across multiple operating systems. Does include application rights management at no additional cost. That feature itself enables you to elevate privileges for select users to either run or install select applications. Or you can even restrict users, right, from running applications in the base image. So that having that capability with application rights management. Talked earlier as well about having context-aware filters, giving you really granular control about how these configurations are applied within Profile Unity and FlexApp. You can apply a configuration based upon a single filter, or you can stack, hundreds of different criteria and apply these policies to these users. Again, this solution works across mixed OS environments, enables seamless migration, and it supports, again, physical, virtual, cloud-based workspaces, right? Your Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, AWS, Nutanix, Frame. If you have any or all of these, Profile Unity with FlexApp works across the whole entire stack. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Johnny. He's going to walk through our demo and kind of walk you through what the console looks like, what that process looks like as far as creating and deploying an application. Johnny, we'll stop sharing and turn it over to you.
Yep, thank you.
Yep.
Where do we go? Here we go. All right, you can see my screen, correct?
Yes.
All right, so this demo environment mimics on-prem. So on-prem, I have a domain controller and I have a Profile Unity server. Profile Unity server is a server-grade operating system. We install the console onto that server. It could be 16, it could be 19, it could be 2022. And then from there, you on this server build configurations. So there's a couple of purposes of this server: building configurations and license check-in, check-out. Right. So our software fails completely open if the server is unavailable. We still load profiles. We still process applications. You will get a dialog box that says licensed server could not be contacted. If that is consequential to you, we do offer clustering. So basically you build a cluster of Profile Unity servers so that one of those nodes can answer the license request and you're good to go there, right? So once you get this up and running and installed onto the server operating system, you build configurations. A lot of folks ask, how do we build configurations? If you've come from and you've seen the olden days of like the AppSense, it was kind of daunting, right? Took me a long time to build a configuration set, and I don't know if I'm not building stuff correctly type of notion that existed in the world. With us, when you pop up in there and there's no configuration, the arrow will point at this create button because it really, really, really wants you to have a configuration. Otherwise, you can't really do anything in this console. So from here, we have guided templates. We have a guided configuration. When you walk through the guided configuration, picking the various bits and pieces and what you want, we support, as we said, AWS, Azure, GCP, on-prem with profile container, whatever it is as inside of here, right? And then from there, it's a handful of clicks. It'll prompt you, where do you want to store your data? If you picked on-prem, this needs to be a network share. If you pick cloud, it will ask you for those cloud credentials to drop them into AWS or Azure, object-based storage. And then once you populate all the way through these settings on this template, it spits you out a configuration. You can then elect to rename the configuration, whatever you like that makes sense to you. And then all you really are left with is, adding a couple of VHDs and some drive mappings and some printer mappings and custom registry entries to make your applications work. And you have a very good, strong working configuration, So if you look at this, I have 3 configurations in here. We're actually going to look at all 3 configurations because in this demo, we're actually going to be touching pieces of all this configuration. So in my user configuration here, I have a whole bunch of configured modules, and also simultaneously, I have a whole bunch of modules that don't have any settings in here. There's nothing that's in our software that says you need to run every single one of these modules. Just run the ones you need. No need to overcomplicate. And then, it's more keep it simple kind of configuration, right? So in here, if we talk about FlexApp, FlexApp is a module inside of a configuration inside of Profile Unity. So if I open up my FlexApp module here, I will have filters that are assigned for, in my case, it's group membership, and I have individual packages per filter, but I can come in here and say, this filter has a whole bunch more applications than just one application, right? It's kind of however you would like to assign them for users to consume. So if we look at our FlexApp packages, our FlexApp packages in this instance, they live on a network share. So how we accomplish attaching to physical and virtual and cloud is we are VHDX. So a lot of our folks in the chat today that are on this webinar say they use app volumes. App volumes stores everything in a proprietary format, right? Everything is VMDK. They attach it to the virtual machine, and then you're off and you're good and you're rolling, right? With us being VHDX, I can take the same VHDX and mount it to my physical operating system because I'm just mounting it to the operating system, my virtual operating system, my cloud operating system. Mounting this to my cloud operating system, I probably want to transfer this out to my cloud storage so that I'm next to my virtual desktop out there and I'm not dragging this VHDX across the WAN. That's just more logistics and semantics of latency and those types of things like that, right? So yeah, that's just basically it, right? So if we look at our profiles, there's this as well, right? Profile Unity's profiles, we store as portability. Portability gives you that cross operating system compatibility. Part of the guided configuration would have already pre-configured all these portability archives for you. You don't have to worry about, I'm installing Notepad++ and I need to make sure I'm capturing Notepad++ personalization. Just running through the guided configuration gets you 99.99% of the way there. Yes, there may be one-off home-baked, home-created applications that store stuff in abnormal locations in the profile that you need to harvest and capture and replay back for the user so that they retain that type of personalization. But our profiles, they're stored as 7Z on-the-fly archives. And what happens is on log off, we compress them back into this format. On login, we copy these back into the operating system and we expand them. There's 2 files per each archive. There's a manifest file as well as the actual data of the profile. The manifest file, just treat it as a comparison check. So if you did something on the virtual desktop that didn't necessarily change a segment of the profile, didn't necessarily change a segment of a portability archive, the manifest will just get checked and it'll say the user didn't change this section of the profile. I already have the latest, greatest copy of the profile data out on my network share. There's no need to copy. It'll just shave down the log off time, right? If I don't need to copy every single thing every single time, right? So when you use portability, as we talked about, we can use them in conjunction with profile disk from us, or also FSLogic's profile containers from Microsoft. And how that would kind of work is we would configure it where portability will restore once to the container, and it will continuously save the data out of the container as a backup. So if the container goes sideways and you needed to, rename or delete the container so the user starts with a fresh container, what will happen is portability will say, user, you forgot all your stuff. I have a record of all of it, and here you go. So on that login, they'll attach that container. Portability will re-inject all the user relevant settings, and they're good to go again. So let's walk through how to capture an application. Our capturing process is very straightforward. It's very, very, very fast. That's why we talk about package once, package fast, all those types of things like that. I'm on this machine. We call it a FlexApp packaging console. This FlexApp packaging console runs on server 2022, and packaging is as easy as grabbing a piece of software and then just firing off the process here. So I'm actually going to transfer and copy over a WinSCP installer. And from this FlexApp packaging console software, I'm going to create a package. Here, I can give it a name. This name is an administrative name, so I can call it, test for whatever. The user will never actually see this package name. And then from here, a lot of my information is pre-filled out in terms of what I configured the console as. So basically on my D drive, I'll actually create the VHDX. And then, we talk about our formatting where we want to do VHDX. If you had cloud, we can actually prompt for cloud credentials here so that you can directly send your package out to Azure or AWS or GCP, as opposed to having it on-prem, then transferring it to that location. Just more in the fact of whatever you do, wherever you need to have your workloads, we can accommodate it, right? So with VHDX, it's going to ask me to throw it onto my local location or also a network location if I had access to those various places. And if you look here, my size is 20 gig. It's also set to expandable. The 20 gig is inconsequential in terms of space as long as I set this as expandable. When I set this as expandable, I'm just thin provisioning. So, WinSCP is going to be very, very small. It doesn't necessarily, or would never actually necessarily eat 20 gigs of space. But, just setting it as expandable will just make it then provisioned. And that actually plays a lot in cloud land, right? If I set fixed volumes on all of my packages, and then later on wanted to go and be in Azure, AWS, or GCP, those places charge me per gig per month used. So, someone gets a very large bill in the mail and asks very interesting questions of why did the Azure spend go very significantly high this month, right? So from here, all I'm left with is just clicking the create button. So when I click the create button, you'll actually see, if I browse out to my local data location, a folder with today's timestamp, and then also an empty VHDX that got created out here. So once that process is done creating, I'm ready to start capturing. So the moment I click the start button, I'm recording the drive on this machine, and I'm recording all the registry values that get inputted into the system here. So you kind of want to minimize the background stuff that happens here. You don't want Windows updates to be running on this machine while you're capturing, because it will most definitely try to capture those Windows updates, and you can have abnormal issues in your applications. But for all intents and purposes, packaging an application is as easy as clicking that start button and then just running through this application install. So I'm going to pick all the settings that I would traditionally pick during install. Anything you dictate here during this install, if you want to customize and strip out or add features or set strange languages, if the package stored those onto like C program files, x86, those would be the settings that were there. We'll talk about packaging automation and how that can help you with consistency, because if I have a team full of administrators and one person packages something this way and another person packages something the other way, I'm kind of holding to whatever they selected is what I have in my world. In that case, with packaging automation, if I send a robot to it, not only do I say, administrator, you don't have to package these handful or large portion of your application sets in the world, I guarantee 100% consistency, because all I'm doing there is plumbing those feature switches into the system so that every single time WinSCP shows up as WinSCP. So from here, I'm just going to proceed through this wizard on the install so that I get a fully installed WinSCP application. And then I'm just going to launch it. You don't really necessarily have to launch it, running it. And once I'm satisfied with how it runs, I can close out the application and finish the package. If your application is a multi-stage or reboot type of application where it wants to reboot and then resume the installer, resist the urge of clicking that reboot button inside of the application and click our reboot button here so that our console reinitiates after the system reboots and continues the install. But for here, I'm ready. I'm going to click finish. This finish button will actually make sure that the package is uninstalled and deactivated and all that fun stuff so that I can replay it on another operating system. And then from here, if I'm fully good, I can save it. And when I save it out here on my local location, again, I went from that singular VHDX to 3 files. I have an administrative icon and I have an XML file so that my Profile Unity server understands the FlexApp package. Without the XML, it doesn't really do too much with the VHDX because it has no additional manifest files and those types of things like that. Then from here, all I'm really left to is copying this package out to a network share that my clients can reach. And then from there, we can actually consume and use the package. So let me transfer this out here to my network share that users using other clients can access it. Being that I'm packaging offline, meaning my FlexApp packaging console is off the domain, I do have to import this into my inventory because it wasn't packaged onto the share where this thing recognized it. So all I really need to do here is go out to my Profile Unity server, plug in my share location. I can't type. Yep. And then I should see my note or my WinSCP test guy here. And then I'm clicking on the XML file, which is that manifest file, so that my system understands it. Once it's imported, it's ready for me to deploy and test, or test and deploy, whatever notion in order you would like those operating in. And I'm actually going to assign it to my user configuration here. So my user configuration has a handful of applications, and we'll actually talk about my other configuration just as well right after I assign this. So assigning it is as easy as dragging it from this right-hand side to the left-hand side. And to get a full simulation of everything that in means of how we attach layers, I'm actually going to check the box for click to layers so that we can see it. I'm going to save my save that setting so that my configuration has it. And then now I need to update my configuration. So my configuration has the record of me adding that application to it. So here I have my user configuration. I need to deploy it onto my shares so that my client on next login understood I made a change to the console or made a change to the configuration. So you'll see here too, I have a system-based FlexApp as well, right? These are FlexApps that attach on machine boot. So well before the user context ever actually hits the system, I attach Adobe Reader and Chrome and OpenOffice. And then on user login, I attach a handful of other applications. And I just kind of round up my session based on these filters to filter like accounting or marketing or HR or whatever it may be, right? If everybody's going to get browsers and Adobe Reader and those types of things like that, and I want to manage them outside of the life cycle of the operating system, that's why we do packaging and FlexApps and all those types of things like that. I can still have that granularity and flexibility to update those packages without firing up gold images and absorbing all the patches for Google Chrome across my system. I can have that, as well as just having, applications that allow me to customize the user sessions based on what they're supposed to get. Just best of both worlds type of thing. So I deployed my configuration, my user configuration. My machine already booted up and picked up the system FlexApps. So all I'm really left to do here is on this machine, log in. If I could type a password correctly. So when I log in, I'll process that user configuration. This is the module that's processing currently, and we should log in, get a background, get all our applications, and everyone should be happy here. So WinSCP is the WinSCP we just created earlier. It creates the same icon on the desktop and in the start menu as the application normally would. That application is click to layer, and we can kind of prove it, right? So if I come out to my disk management while everything is kind of mounting through, we'll see that there isn't technically a WinSCP disk that's mounted here. That's how we operate. We mount those VHDXs into the operating system and we're good, right? So I'm going to run the WinSCP, and then you'll see on the fly this dialog box pops up that says, "Oh, your Windows license will expire." It doesn't say that. Your Windows license will just expire. But WinSCP is loaded here, and then you also see back here that my WinSCP test picked up here. So that's as easy as packaging an application, right? All these other applications are user-based applications that I can load, or system-based applications, and I'm good to go. Packaging is very fast, very simple, very fast.
Hey, Johnny, real quick,
Yes.
can you explain the use cases for click to layer? I know we kind of talked about,
Click to
departmental.
layer is traditionally used for applications that are sparingly used. We're talking applications that are quarter end or month end, but you don't necessarily want to hide the application from the user. And, the intent here is just to shave a few seconds or milliseconds off of a login time, where we're not necessarily mounting that package every single login, and we kind of mount it on the fly for the users. So if it's sparingly used, like a month end application, we still want to give users access to it. We don't want them to put in a ticket saying that the accounting system is not available to me, or the accounting application is not available to me, because they may have a scenario where they need to look something up, but it's not month end. That's why we kind of talk about why we want to use something like click to layer like that, right?
Very good.
So FlexApp packaging automation, as we talked about and gleamed over briefly, it's a system that allows my administrators and my engineers to recoup time. So when we ran an analysis of applications that are in the world, we're talking, 70 to 75% of the applications are the easy applications. Those are my Google Chromes. Those are my Adobe Readers, my WinSCPs, and my putties. No one's ever gotten the super sexy points in their world by saying, I packaged successfully WinSCP, right? You're there to deliver the line of business applications for the hospital, or for the law firm, or for the financial firm, or whatever it is. Those are the ones that make the business money, while the expectation of things like WinSCP and Putty and FileZilla and those types of things, they're just expected to be there and expected to work. So why do we need to spend all our time packaging those easy applications if I can send a robot to do it, right? So packaging automation is accomplished by two pieces here. We have a packaging automation control plane node, which is traditionally on a profile Unity server. It's super lightweight. It's in just one additional service. It's the brains of the operation on sending packaging commands to the packaging agents, right? Once that gets installed, it's just a handful of other files that need to be created. So one of them is a defaults.json, right? Defaults.json just has who is my primary and how do I get access to my primary. These are all encrypted credentials that are defined up front. The second one is, where do I store my application packages when FlexApp packaging automation is doing its job? The third one is, where is profile Unity so that I can automatically import those packages that automation created into my inventory so I can skip a step. And then the last one is the installer user that is actually performing the install on the agent machine. What are its credentials? So once I fill that out and you follow through all the commands and setting up this file, and it'll actually create you all these null variables that you don't necessarily use, but you can if you really chose to use them. And you end up with the defaults file. So once you have that defaults file, the second file we need to create is a packages file. So this is basically line for line. This is every single package that we're going to package with automation. So understand that it's only logistically 4 lines. This is the administrative name. Size on disk, this is 20 gig. Fixed is null, which means we're thin provisioned. And then the installer is located where? So this is pointing out to my share location with the .executable. If it was at MSI, you would point at MSI exec, and then the installer arg would point over to the MSI, including all these silent installation switches and feature flags and all those types of things like that. But being that it's executable, all I really need to do in this argument is put in the silent install, and if this package is going to be for all users or not. Once I save that, I have one application here. If I wanted to chain it down and have 100 applications, I can just copy this section, paste, and change those 4 lines. Rinse and repeat over and over and over. And I can fill this with 100 applications or 1,000 applications. And based on the amount of nodes I have, is how the workload will get spread out. So if I have 4 FlexApp packaging agents and I have 1,000 applications in there, 250 simultaneously being captured at the same time. So click the go button on a Friday, go hit up happy hour, come back on a Monday, all my applications are packaged and ready for me to test. So from there, I have those 2 files. So all I'm really left to do is execute this PowerShell command, right? And then it's going to send the job. I've never actually logged onto this machine during this period of time. My agent is reporting into my control plane node, and it is going in there and sending a job. And it says, I'm running this package of WinSCP on this client agent IP address, which is this packaging agent node. When it's done, it'll output go from running 1 to successful 1. If there's any errors that you would see in there, they would pop up briefly out here on screen, and also in a log. So that's what packaging automation kind of gives you. So if I come out to my share location, assuming I have CPU cycles and my machine is not frozen, which is possible. Wow, this is intriguing. 2 seconds here. Let me stop sharing and reshare.
Like I said, automation is great for those scenarios where you've got a bunch of apps that you have to keep updated, especially if you're, you know, if you are one of just a few admins, right, they're having to upkeep these application sets on the variety of different workspaces, physical, virtual, whatever.
And yes, my system did freeze hard, and it is during crash. Wow.
Okay, we'll give you a moment here to come back. We'll just kind of talk through some of this. So if anybody has any questions, again, throw them into the chat window. Johnny was going through the process, kind of showing, once it comes back up and kind of talk to this too, how the process is for creating, one of these layers. You guys saw how easy it was, how quick it was that he created the WinSCP application, how quickly we were to take that, import that into the console, the same console for Profile Unity as FlexApp, and then be able to distribute that to a user. And then when the user logged in, we saw the click to layer and how that was to operate. Is there, Johnny, quick question, is there any limit to the number of packages that can be assigned to a user or a desktop?
It is a very significantly high limit. We're talking Microsoft's limit. 2048 is the official limit. Mm-hmm. In terms of like the high end, what exactly has happened that I've seen in the world, I've seen folks with like, 50 or 60 applications at some point in time. But, we're coming up with a new technology in our 685 release where we can actually merge disks to reduce the amount of VHDXs that are mounted. So if you're going to say accounting gets these handful of VHDXs normally, and I only want to mount once, we can actually do a merge operation on those and only mount one time.
Got it.
There's a question in the chat that says FlexApp works with MECM, Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. So FlexApp 1 does an integration with it where you can use Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager, aka SCCM, to actually deploy those FlexApp 1 applications out there. Understand that FlexApp and FlexApp 1 aren't actually doing full installations of applications. We're doing an application layer. A FlexApp 1 basically converted that VHDX into a standalone executable. And from that standalone executable perspective, using something like SCCM to actually deploy it out there, it just copies that executable out there for folks. And then, they have it to run when they're offline.
Very good. Yeah, keep the questions coming. Thanks for that, Johnny. We'll continue to monitor that chat window. I did have a question. How is FlexApp licensed?
FlexApp is licensed per user. It's licensed either in concurrency or in named user. It's fully sorry, can't talk. If you are concurrent in your licenses for like Citrix or Horizon, there's a reason why you're concurrent. You're a healthcare, you have shift work, you have all those types of things like that, right? But if you're a named user and you're just an office, you have a bunch of office users that work 9 to 5, you're a named user. So we tend to want to match those configurations so that I'm not trying to sell you concurrency into a named user model or vice versa, and you're running out of licenses and all those types of things like that. It's just, we try to do what's best for our customers. Understand when you own Profile Unity, you own every single function and feature in Profile Unity when you buy the one license, regardless of what it is, right? So there's no like upsell saying that you have these handful of modules, then you buy this edition, then you'll have these handful of modules and any of those types of things like that, right? So when you own one, you own all the advanced functions, advanced features in it. So there's no strange games that try to get played on the back end.
Hey, Johnny, there's a quick question of what's the process like to move your on-prem FlexApp up to a cloud provider?
Yeah, I'm actually walking back through that right now once my stuff boots back up. So 2 seconds here and I will show you. So let me pop back here. Let me load back into Azure, unfortunately. Is there any more questions while we wait for me to resume time here?
And you mentioned too, right, the FlexApp. While it is part of Profile Unity, it is also can be implemented separately. So if a customer is using their own whatever user persona management solution today, we can still utilize FlexApp, correct?
Yes, FlexApp can be procured on its own. You still will stand up a Profile Unity server in your worlds. It's there to check out the licenses and to assign FlexApps. You wouldn't be using it to necessarily manage the profile pieces if you just bought it by yourself, right? All those other functions would be grayed out. All right, so I should be back in some fashion. All right, let's talk about Azure in this case. Azure is easy to demo for us because I have stuff stood up in Azure. So when we talk about storage inside of cloud, we're talking about storage out into, containers inside of the cloud. Am I authenticated really? Because it's not behaving well.
It's nothing like doing a demo live and in person.
Live demo. Let me grab my password.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why it wasn't actually authenticated, even though it says I was authenticated. Okay, so when we talk Azure, we talk how we operate inside of Azure. We operate inside of Azure as Azure Blob. So there's storage accounts. So there's no file server on the front end that you can actually interface with. It's not necessarily SMB that you're talking to here. You can stand up Azure files inside of a storage account if you want to host the applications and profiles like that. But you can just purely offload that and say we're talking to S3 buckets in AWS or GCP buckets in Google Cloud or Azure Blob storage inside of Azure, right? So here we have a few things. We can store applications out here. So these are FlexApp packages that were transferred out to the cloud, same VHDX, same size that you would be consuming. So that's why we talked very, very critically about that fixed mode versus expandable mode, right? And also at the same time, I can host my configurations out here. I can do all that stuff. But on the secondary storage account, when we talk about there's two storage accounts. I'm actually hosting my profile out here as well. So my portability 7Z archives are all hosted out here. The reason why there's two storage accounts is Azure Blob operates quite a bit differently than normal, SMB shares in your world. I can't be very granular in terms of permissions. In terms of permissions, what we have is the light is on or the light is off, right? So I don't want users to necessarily have access to be able to write to this location because they shouldn't. All I have out here is I have my config file, right? I have that same INI file we talked about before. And then I have my FlexApp packages. So I need to give them read permissions through a shared signature, it's a shared access URI. I generate that. And then I have an access key to my secondary storage account out here. And this is where my profile lives. I do actually have to give users the ability to write out here and read out here. So I can load my profile and write it back out here when I'm done with it. So that's how we kind of accomplish that. So I grabbed the shared access URI from storage account 1, which held my configurations and FlexApps. And then I grabbed that and kind of combined it together with the access key to the secondary storage account where the user has full read write. And then I end up with those two things kind of glued together as a very long string GUID. And then that GUID is actually configured inside of a group policy so that my user knows, my client knows how to have access to that. So transferring a package out to the cloud is just as easy as packaging. So let me authenticate to my packaging console here. And let me load up my packaging console since it kind of went completely earlier. So you'll see here, if I authenticate to my profile Unity side from this console, you'll see an whole inventory of all my applications once this loads up. So transferring this from on-prem to the cloud is just as easy as hitting this dropdown and doing a clone operation. So this clone operation, I can call it test and stuff and whatever, right? And from this dropdown, I pick cloud. I pre-configured the access keys inside of my profile Unity server, and I know which storage account I'm talking to. I can put notes in here, so I know that my storage account 1 has configurations in FlexApps, while my storage account 2 just has portability so that you don't mistakenly send stuff to the wrong place. So when I pre-stage that here, all I'm left with is how we denote we're talking to Azure, and that's that. I take those access keys and it says talk to Azure and put my stuff into a container called FlexApps, as we just saw earlier, FlexApps, right? And once I kick off that go button, it'll actually start copying the application for me based on the name I defined on that name. So if I were to hit go there on that 7-zip, it would show up as test stuff, and it would store its stuff out into Azure. And that's how you transfer it and make it happen like that. So let's talk about playing it back. So before we do that, let me log back in here and I'll show you my Azure config. That'll actually copy down my profile from Azure to a machine I'm running in this on-prem lab, as well as mount FlexApps into that location as well. Assuming Edge wants to behave. All right, so let's authenticate here. And we'll see that reference to that AZ:// a whole bunch inside of this configuration. So I have a config called Azure. I'm doing FlexApps with my AZ denotation. Basically, I just copied a bunch of on-prem FlexApps out to Azure. And then also simultaneously at the same time, I ran the configuration set using the Azure template. So I'm doing AZ:// portability, percent username, percent, blah, blah, blah. So everybody has their own profile. So from there, I deployed this configuration, right? So if I were to click on this deploy button again down here, I have the operation here to actually point it at my correct storage account into my correct container out there. And that's that. So then on this machine, I have a 20H2 machine. This machine, it runs Profile Unity and FlexApp from checking out a license from this server, but it is purely 100% pulling profiles from Azure and mounting applications from Azure storage. Assuming it ran, which I don't know if it did because I may have booted it before I had a Profile Unity server. Sorry. Normally the demo is more smoother when the stuff doesn't crash in the middle of it, right? Are there any other questions while I wait for this to load up real quick?
I had a question about the process of how you update an application. I think you talked about cloning, right? We talked about how you're cloning that to
yeah, the update process for applications is just the same, as almost as easy as capturing the initial application. So a lot of folks take the approach of every single time Google makes an update to Chrome, I'm going to package a new package of Chrome. That's a way to do it. Otherwise, a way to update and a way to do in-place upgrades is that if users are consuming my application, I have read-only locks onto one of these VHDs, I won't be able to commit a read-write lock to it, right? So what I have to do there is I can do the same clone operation because it's going to be locked, and I'm going to call it 7-zip with the new version. And then all I'm left there was all I'm left to do there is actually just extend that package. And when I run the extend of a package, I have the ability to go in there and run the auto updater if I allow that to be a thing, or I can just do an in-place install of the application. So let's just run through that real quick. I have that note or that WinSCP I captured earlier, right? So there's no locks, there's no nothing here, right? So I can actually do, if I will let me activate. So I then should be able to come in here and do stuff to this package. Merge, clone, where's my, oh, sorry. I have it assigned to myself. That's why it's not letting me do that. But yes, you would just be able to edit this package, assuming you don't have a lock on it because it's being consumed from earlier. Right. But
Can you show the editor as well?
yes,
I think that's a pretty good differentiator. You know, we talk about Citrix app layering, right? I'm using that as an example. You go through a process, you create an application layer, realize you left a shortcut or you forgot some registry entry or whatever it is, right? Now you have to add another version and go back through that process again. So
packages are not assigned. There we go. There we go.
I had to find one that's
I have an editor. It was not completed because it was not successful. What do you mean? That's a metadata edit. Where's my regular edit? There we go. All right, there we go. Found one.
Okay.
So this is the package editor. So for whatever reason, you wanted to remove, disable a service, disable a scheduled task, delete registry, change file system objects inside of an application, but you don't want to necessarily fire up the package all the way to do that or recapture it or whatever notion that is. I can basically just create it like this and just use this package editor and come out here and remove a shortcut without necessarily firing up the package in its entirety or repackaging it and making sure that I remove that shortcut. But yes, that's what this package editor will let you do.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this just because, like I said, I was the guy, the administrator at one point, right, that was using, say, Citrix app layering, for example, and you know, you go through the process, especially if you're not using automation, you're kind of relying on yourself and you're, you know, going through manual intervention. You select the wrong thing or what have you. You go through that process, you finally finalize, you deploy it out to do some testing and you realize, oh man, I missed this, or I've got this shortcut here I should have gotten rid of. Now I've got to go back through and create another version, go back through this process again. And it's kind of time consuming, right? So the fact that you guys have two options, one, I could have just kept that all together and maybe have went with the automation and removed the manual human intervention, or two, use the editor here so that, you know, again, very quickly I can go in, modify that, and then away I go. And, you know, again, saving lots and lots of time. So
yeah, Randy, my Azure stuff is not working correctly.
Okay.
Crash, but let's
no worries.
see if there's any more questions.
Let's see if we have any other questions here. So I had another question. Can you flex up an application like scanner software that has drivers for the scanner?
Yes, most definitely. Have lots of success with that relatively easily.
So that brings up a good topic, right? So we talk about application compatibility. Johnny, you want to speak to maybe, you know, what applications, you know, are maybe not best suited for application layering, or you know, what sort of challenges, kind of compare and contrast?
The big one that a lot of folks have to be very aware of if you're doing FlexApp is prerequisites. Try to not land the prerequisite inside of the FlexApp package. So basically land those onto your endpoint machines, you know, C++, .NET framework, various license services, those types of things like that. And then when you're capturing the application from there, you're just capturing 100% just the application. You just imagine it, we're a car driving down the highway 80 miles an hour, and we all got to jump into the car, right? So if I need to jump a service into the car, or actually not just a service, like a .NET framework into the car, or a C++ into the car, and all those things like that, I have to wait for some of those things to land because they're my building blocks of my application, and then have to land the application from there. So that's how you get very good success, is make sure that the bits and pieces that are in there, like the prerequisites and those types of runtime things, are landed on the operating system and also the packaging console, so that you're not packaging those. And then from there, you have a relatively high success rate in having application success there. There are applications out there that are very nuancy, right? Recently, I packaged Autodesk's Revit for somebody. Revit has a distinct recipe / formula on how to package it correctly, because it has its own downloader. It's like a download manager. So basically, to make that successfully packaged, you install the download manager on the FlexApp packaging console, and also you install the license service on the FlexApp packaging console. Then you just install that license service on the endpoint. And then when you capture, you're just 100% capturing Revit. And was where you'll have good success. Applications that don't necessarily play very well with our software are things that have virtual hardware. So something like a Citrix workspace app has all that virtual emulated hardware for like the webcam redirection and all those bits and pieces that live there. Those types of things don't work correctly in our world. Another one potentially is like a Wireshark, where it creates that virtual NIC to be able to do PCAPing and all those types of things like that. But yes.
That's a good point, right? So, I know you guys used to say just because you can, not only that, but just because you can layer an application doesn't always mean you should, right? So it's kind of, there's some considerations, if you will, right? Whether or not to include that application in the base image and just move on, or whether, you do layer the application at user login at boot or what have you. But the great thing about your solution, you essentially provide a toolbox with not just a screwdriver. You got a little bit of every kind of sort of tool, right, to kind of fit every situation, whether it's applying it boot, login, across the board.
The main thing to understand too, when you own FlexApp, we just don't sell you software and tell you to go away. If you need help packaging some of your more difficult applications, me or one of my other cohorts most definitely are welcome and available to jump on a call and walk through the process and talk about A, B, C, D, E, F, and G's that go into packaging applications.
And like I said, I know, Johnny, you're having a little difficulty with your lab and everything, so we weren't able to showcase the Azure component there. But just know that, again, FlexApp, Profile Unity, just some of the capability there, being able to take advantage of cloud-based storage, delivering profiles and applications, and then also, like I said, just being able to transfer that data in the background or copying, cloning those applications to cloud-based storage and having that available moving forward, right? So there's definitely a lot of benefit there, especially as we look to, even sort of environments where we have customers that are utilizing, these cloud providers as their DR sites, or now we're migrating to cloud to run 100% from cloud, or maybe I have a secondary data center. You guys have solutions and configuration options in place to support those sort of scenarios.
Yes,
so it's really all encompassing, right? But from physical to virtual to not being locked in by a specific vendor or technology, being able to really utilize across the board. And that makes something a little different, because a lot of times when we go in customers and they're using, say, app volumes or maybe Citrix app layering, you've got one guy that's responsible for packaging and patching that environment, versus you've got someone else that's patching and packaging applications for your physical environment. Utilizing something like FlexApp, now you can do that across the board, right, and have success. So definitely is a game changer moving forward.
Randy, I think you may have a slide or two left. I'll just turn the sharing back to you.
Yeah, sure thing. Let me do that. So let me share my screen here. And there we go. So Johnny, appreciate the demo there. I do want to mention, for those of you that are interested in evaluating this further, let us know. We can go through a Profile Unity / FlexApp POC. It's pretty simple to get deployed in your environment. If it's something you guys are interested in, definitely reach out to your XenTegra client executive, and we'll follow up as well after this workshop. If it's something you're interested in, want to get a little more experience, let us know. If you want to just even take this offline and have a more in-depth sort of discussion / demo, we're welcome that as well. Also want to quickly talk about the roadmap. And so, this is planned for Q1 of next year. There's some new features, functionality coming out. Quite a few different things on here. Johnny, you and Tom want to kind of speak to a couple of these?
Yeah, basically lots of innovative features coming out. Application cloaking, which is a file system level cloaking. It will let me hide my executable from people that shouldn't necessarily see it. Not necessarily just only for Flex apps. It'll actually work for native applications. So if you want to hide notepad.exe for fun, you can. Other ones are bulk conversions from app V and MSIX into FlexApp. So if you already have significant investments there and you just want to make a one-for-one transfer over, we have the thing where inside of the FlexApp packaging console, it will just do a clone over to it. Other ones are basically Profile Unity's console can become a quote unquote application store. If you do have AppVs and MSIXs and ThinApps and Amazon apps from like AppStream or any of those types of things like that, the 6.8.5 version of Profile Unity will have the ability to deliver those applications as well. So you have one console to kind of rule them all as opposed to 6 consoles to rule them all. FlexApp will have an API exposed. So if you're a API automator type of person, you can make that happen through scripting functions as well, right? Pre-caching, pre-cache block mapping. Basically, it's just predictive caching to make large applications run faster, or applications that have lots and lots of registry keys run faster. Those types of notions like that, right? Triggers, it's just enhanced triggers, enhanced use cases of triggers. We just adding more functions and features to the types of triggers that exist out there. The FlexApp packaging console will come out of the box prompting for system restore based rollback as opposed to snapshot restore based rollback. When we run our FlexApp packaging console traditionally on-prem, we do have a pre-application install snapshot so that every chance possible we can roll back to clean state and not have to worry about the residual stuff that gets left over on application uninstalls, just so we always have a clean workspace. Well, from here, we actually utilize system restore, or the system's VSS portion of it to actually do that system restore rollback for you. It makes it easier in the cloud so that you're not worrying about shuffling around a snapshot into a disk and an assignment and all that fun stuff that lives in the cloud, because it's not the same as an on-prem hypervisor. OS optimizers for the FlexApp packaging console. When it comes out of box, it will prompt you and tell you that you don't have the optimizations. Do you want to run them? It's kind of up to your discretion on how you want to do it, if you want to do it type of thing. FlexApps will have additional version functions and version features. Basically, I can put a version tracker inside of each package. So then if you want to trigger it off through like scripting functions and all those types of things like that, it can happen. FlexApp's alerts, so any FlexApp like alerting or error logging or any of that types of stuff like that, they all end up in Event Viewer now as opposed to its own log. It'll still be in its own log, but it'll just be an Event Viewer just as well. Layer merging, basically you're doing like a department apps type of thing, where I say accounting gets these handful of applications, merge me in one giant package for them. That's that.
All right, appreciate that. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff coming out. That's the other thing with you guys. You guys are constantly innovating and adding newer features, functionality. So, that's great to see. Definitely appreciate that. Real quick, want to throw this out there again last time, see if there's any additional questions. Definitely feel free to throw those in. You guys
while we wait for those, I do have Azure working now.
Oh, okay. Here, we'll stop sharing. Let's look at that. Very good.
All right,
I want you to go through that. Throw those questions in the chat window.
Yep. So this machine, it's connected to my domain that's on my data center, quote unquote. And then from there, I'm going to be loading a profile and mounting FlexApp applications off of Azure. So you should see my splash screen. Then you'll see my Azure config populating here, right? Various modules that are loading. And, this one's kind of at the discretion of how fast your internet is to actually download these particular portability profiles. So if your profile is very large and you have a lot of stuff and you only have a 10 meg pipe, could take a second. But, I'm here. I have my 7-zip that I can run. I have my PuTTY I can run. I have my Google Chrome I can run. I also simultaneously will run disk management. And these are the ones that were denoted as AZ inside of my config. And that's basically loading a profile and mounting applications off of Azure.
Can you also show real quick before you, I don't know if you're planning to disconnect those, but can you also show, the fact that those do integrate with the context menus, the control panel? I mean, they look and appear as if they're installed, correct? Yeah.
They most definitely do. If I had any applications that had context here, it would.
Right.
The files.
There you go, 7-zip.
7-zip. There you go. Add to archive. We'll add one to archive for fun.
So, you know, it just looks and appears as if it's natively installed. However,
It's full 100% native. We don't do full isolations, so we don't bubble the entire application. Then we have to poke all kinds of holes into it to allow this application to talk to that application. So C program files 7-zip is C program file 7-zip, not C program files kind of 7-zip, right? Yeah.
gotcha.
All right, that's that part.
Good deal. Any other questions or comments before we break? Just wanted to share this again. Again, if you guys have any additional questions or comments, you know, following this, definitely reach out. We'll be in touch. I know we talked about a lot of information here today, maybe a little overwhelming. So, you know, if you're interested in FlexApp or Profile Unity, definitely reach out to your XenTegra client executive. We'll reach out and have a conversation with you too, and just touch base and see if we can help. And again, if you want to take advantage of, you know, I mentioned the complimentary micro assessments. We couple those with Stratosphere, which I know we really didn't talk about today, but that's another great solution. Definitely reach out and let us know. Definitely appreciate you guys joining today. Johnny, Tom, appreciate your assistance as well. Couldn't have done this without you guys, so appreciate everything you guys are doing there, and thank you as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys.